Welcome to the TryPod, where we break down the NRL every game, every week from a punting perspective. I'm Jacob Wynn, and we're going to talk Origin team selections now that, of course, Origin is upon us and the team lists are official. We've just still got a round of NRL to preview, 5 games to break down. I've got 3 best bets. My form has been no good last 5 weeks, honestly. 9 wins, 10 losses on the best bets. So slightly worse than even 50-50 on those after going 1 and 2 on the weekend. The win was Knights team total under, but we lost with Storm Sharks unders. It actually was quite high scoring, and I had the Broncos too on Sunday. So just quickly with the Broncos, I actually was thinking about it. They've killed me 4 weeks in a row. I took the Broncos to win in New Zealand. They lost. Then I faded the Broncos against a red-hot dog side, and the Broncos win and play amazing. Then I had either team 1-12 when everyone thought Brisbane would get revenge over Penrith, and the Broncos get smashed, can't even lose by 12. And then I take the Broncos to bounce back against the Dragons. They blow a lead and a man advantage in the second half and lose that. And let me be clear, that's me acknowledging a weakness of my picks, not getting those Brisbane games right. I'm not complaining about crazy form lines that you can't connect. That's not an excuse, because I love the unpredictable. I want the up and downs, and I strive to pick the right teams in the right weeks. And I have not been able to do that with Brisbane. We sit at 22 and 18 on best bets. So that makes me think, geez, I'd be closer to 65% than 55% if it wasn't for Brisbane games. The other thing about the Broncos, who have lost 5 of 6 games, I'm going to give you a positive, Broncos fans. You've lost 5 of the last 6. Walsh is out. Hunt is out. Cobbo has a wrist injury. Carrigan and Haas both have slight injury clouds, although Carrigan's nothing major, and on Origin duty, so you're hoping nothing bad happens there. They're beat up. But you've got to buy. And the fact that we do now have Origin fever, it means Brisbane will not be dominating the headlines in the rugby league world. So that's a positive for you guys. I want to begin with my initial thoughts on the Queensland team, because I didn't get a chance to respond to that on Sunday night. Also, let's talk about the Blues team too. I want to know your views, guys. So hit me in the comments. What do you think of the makeup of the sides? Also, any big disagreements over who's been left out? If you've got an early tip for game 1, Origin game 1, let me know. I've got a couple of the sharpshooters in the house, so let's do the housekeeping there. The boys, I think the boys swept last weekend. We had Padonis is 8-1, and Padonis had the Roosters. Matty had the team total for the Roosters, which went over as well. Padonis had Roosters to cover the line. And Benny had Hudson Young, who scored one of the many Raiders tries on Sunday. So awesome work by the sharpshooters. I've got their clips in the chamber as well for this weekend. As I say, 5 games to assess. But as always, let's give you my best bets up front. Then we'll do Origin chat, and then we'll go game by game. I do have 3 best bets, and I'm going to start with taking the Parramatta Eels plus 7.5 on Friday night, $1.87 on Lads and Neds. That's the alt handicap. I'm sacrificing 3 cents to get the field goal in there as well. Against Manly, this is a close game for mine. Both missed their captain and halfback. Jake Trbojevic being out for Manly, significant as well. And I think the big thing in our favour is that while Tom Trbojevic is not picked for Origin and captains Manly, I'm not sure he's 100%. So I don't really fear Manly. I've seen improvement by Para week in, week out. I know now you're ripping Moses back out of the side, but I think defensively the Eels have gotten better. I don't see any areas of the park where Manly is way better, and that game is a home game at CommBank for Para. 7.5, too many points for mine. I also think it's too many points for the Knights. I'm taking plus 8.5 at $1.91, 365. But I think they're also 1 cent less on Ladbrokes and Neds. So that's Newcastle against Penrith at Bathurst. And what it comes down to, yes, Ponga is out, but a couple of big ins for the Knights. Lucas, Thompson back. Sharp's going to switch to fullback. But this Penrith team is an absolute shell of their former selves, not just the players they've lost in the offseason, but you get 5 Origin players and a couple others out as well for Penrith. So it's virtually, apart from, look, I don't want to disrespect, there's still some good players there, but 12 of the 17 for Penrith are sort of New South Wales Cup. I think that Newcastle goes to Bathurst with the stronger side. Does it mean they'll win? I know they don't have the better coach, but I'm getting 8.5 points, and you just can't expect Penrith to play like the Penrith we expect. I know that team has the ability to overperform, and it's where coaching comes into it. But way too many points for Newcastle. The fact that the Knights have been so bad actually makes them extra desperate on Saturday as well. I have seen the clips for Padonis and Matty are both also on that Knights-Panthers game, but I haven't had the time to watch their clip yet. So I'm interested to see if they also see it similarly. And then later Saturday, I'm also going to lay the points with the Sharks, minus 9.5 at $1.90. Cronulla plays the Roosters. And I think this one's just actually quite a simple one, and I just want to lay it before it gets to double digits. The Roosters have had the guts ripped out of them with Origin, 5 players picked, which was as bad as you could have expected from a Roosters perspective. And the Roosters haven't even had a good year. They're coming 11th, so the form's gotten a little better lately. But one of the shining lights for the Roosters has been Nafahu White, who's also out this week. And then you get a Sharks side who has no Origin selections, despite being top 4 almost perennially, 5th at the moment this year, just beat the Storm. So it's just a bit of a mismatch, especially in terms of the forward packs. So I think it's a pretty simple lay for me. I know that the Sharks will be a popular pick, and the more people look at that, plenty will jump on. But I think at this point in time, it's still a light enough line. So those are my 3 favorite plays. I'll throw them in the comments when I get a moment when we tee up someone else's clip. But as you can see behind me, I'm sharing my screen with, as Undertaker says, he got Sharks minus 3.5. That certainly is a gift. I know we did talk last week about how that Cowboys line moved 5 points from the look ahead, and I said that would have been a great bet and ended up losing by 20 points. But generally, there are advantages you can find with around Origin selection, especially once you start getting whispers of certain players that are going to get in, or even potentially once the teams are announced. Bookies don't always move as swiftly as they should, and 1 or 2 players that weren't expected to be in the Origin frame can be a big difference in a week like this. So I still like the Sharks minus 9.5, but if you've got minus 3.5, you can almost probably get in the queue. And Luke says, I got Manly minus 5.5, which is still available on Dabble too, but that's the opposite side of the best bet I've got. Though there is a comment there that Lucas and Sharp have some injury concerns, but I mean, at this point in the season, there's certainly plenty of players that, even if it's not on the injury report, there are injury concerns. And this week, more than any other, sort of test your depth when you do pull the Origin players out. But I like the challenge that these Origin abbreviated weeks present. However, let's just talk Origin because it's a great topic to kind of cover, and I'll give you my thoughts just on the teams, and I want to incorporate yours as well. I did get my wires a bit crossed on Sunday night. I don't know if I fell for a hoax, an old story about a Cam Munster broken jaw that got copied just to scare people. Sorry if I scared any of you Queenslanders out there. The comments on the thread were just adding to my confusion. So I'm not sure if I was the only one that had some doubt about that. But Munster is all good. However, the other injury news I was not across at the time on Sunday night was Cobbo with a wrist complaint from the Broncos game. And that was after we knew Talangi got injured on Saturday night. So suddenly Queensland was short 2 wingers, knowing Xavier Coates would get 1 spot. And apparently Billy Slater made the call before even waiting for Cobbo to get scans on Monday. If you had told me on Sunday night Cobbo was out, to me, I would have picked Cam Pereira as a straight swap and picked him as the other winger, left Valentine Holmes in the centres. And another option would have been Jesse Arthurs, who is in the 20-man squad, to be fair. You also could have just moved Holmes to the wing and then picked the 300-gamer Dane Gagai, who has played with Billy Slater. You know he won't let you down. But instead, I was a bit surprised to see Rob Toyer get picked. However, it does remind me of being a bit surprised 3 years ago when Billy omitted Gagai and picked the Hammer, just because we didn't see that coming, especially the Hammer getting picked at centre. But the consistent theme there is that Queensland needs to defend players like Stephen Crichton and Latrell Mitchell, and Billy is opting for athleticism, and he wants players with physical tools above all, and that's why Toya has got the nod. As there's a comment, do you think Ponga will be goal kicking? I would assume Val Holmes, and he kicked him a bit better on Sunday. So caught me by surprise, but it did immediately make me think, well, what's Billy seeing with Toya? You know, he did actually man mark Latrell Mitchell and Mitchell played left center for Souths that game against Roosters. And of course, Toya looked pretty good handling another one of the best centers in the world when he matched up with Herbie Farnworth at Magic Round. So there's enough ingredients there for Billy to put his faith in. So it caught a few of us by surprise, but you can understand it. The rest of the backline, as you can see there, that was what we expected. The halves, I thought was a question mark whether DCE's form would get him straight in. But of course, he is the captain because you knew Munster had to be there after being injured last year and having the issues with that like hip and groin. Of course, Dearden had to be there too, but the way you fit them all in is Dearden is in at number 14. Grant recovering from that hammy and playing, even though the Storm lost and Grant didn't play 80, that's huge for Queensland. Tino, of course, wasn't there last year, so that's a massive boost to the Maroons pack. And then speaking of the front row, one of the toughest omissions had to be Horsburgh. He's been great this year for the Raiders. Had a better year than, let's say, a Mo Fotuaika. But I think it is worth remembering, like you pick a team on a little bit more than 10 rounds this year. A year ago, Horsburgh was playing reserve grade and Fotuaika was winning player of the year for the Titans. So there's enough trust there for Fotuaika. When I picked my Maroons team, I had Fotuaika over Horsburgh as well. I also had Collins in my team. So that is the same team that I picked outside of, obviously, before the Cobbo injury, then picking Rob Toya. And once Gilbert was out, then I also picked Trent Loiero to come onto my bench. I had Fermor in there as well. You know, Loiero is going to add some aggression that this Maroon side needs to combat the likes of, you know, what do you think Spencer Leniu and Huddy Young are going to do when they're injected into the game? So I like the Loiero pick. There's some other rumors about potentially an injury niggle for Nane. Like Queensland's edge depth is so tested. You've got Cotter, who's not a specialist second rower, but has done a job for Queensland when being forced out there in the past. And there's just really no other options for Queensland. I mean, yeah, Fini Furiaki, who is in the extended squad, but Billy's going to trust Cotter. I also think Cotter gives a little bit extra cover at hooker. People are all saying like Dearden can come on and play 9. I don't know. The other thing is, if you get an injury in the back line, the guy I'm looking at is Beau Fermor. He comes on and he can cover either center spot, and then someone like Hammer or Val can shift out or back, you know, depending on who may get injured. Well, you know, it's injuries, it's sin bins, it's HIAs. You do need to be able to cover every, you know, conceivable position. So no great surprise for me, but like if I could pick the team, I reckon Cam Pereira, who led the comp in tries last year, is maybe a little hard done by to not even make the 20. But other than that, I think Billy's picked, you know, the best squad available to him. Let's compare that to the Blues side, and I'll throw your comments in there as well, guys. So that's the same 1 to 7 that I had for the Blues, same starting props as well. Have you guys got any issues with that? I know some people still preferred Teddy, preferred Pappenhausen. I have shared my reasons why I would have gone with Edwards, who also played for Australia last year, and you know, did the job for the Blues. Are there people in the comments who actually would have preferred to see Luai there? Of course, you've got that Penrith connective tissue. It's like there's 5 Panthers in this team, but then there's former Panthers as well. And, you know, Luai and Nathan have played so many games together as opposed to Moses and Nathan never played together. For me, I just want to – generally, I'm going to lean to just, like, pick the better players and they will work it out. I think the wide backs are hard to argue with. Some people had Trbojevic, but as I noted on the recap, he's just not completely himself. That's why I'm fading Manly this week for a best bet. And I actually think it's great news if you're a Manly fan. You'd be really like quietly happy that neither Trbojevic brothers in this Blues team. That's going to help you in a period where you may have struggled as Just Common says, New South Wales version of Cronk and JT, and scarily for Queensland, that could be true. I personally picked a little bit of a different team, but I was tilted towards 2025 form and a little bit out of the box. Like for hooker, I actually went Egan. I like Coruscant probably slightly ahead of Robson too, but it's close. I had Matty Burton as my utility, but I know I'm a little bit on an island there. I sort of look at Burton covering all your outside backs, maybe 13, your halves. But admittedly, you pick Watson, did the job last year, gives you that 1-2 punch at 9, can certainly play like a middle forward role. And potentially, like Watson's played in the back line before as well. So he is sort of gives you that true utility value. And then I did have Terrell May, as a lot of us probably did. I wasn't as shocked as probably some people to see Max King there, because I've brought up Max King's name several times this season as being in the discussion. I do also think there's more than purely on the field footy reasons for behind May being omitted from the 20-man squad, which means he's not even the next cab off the rank if the Blues need a prop, and there is a possibility the Blues do need one more prop. Some people will say that's wrong. You should just purely pick on footy, production. But other people will say, no, when you pick a team, you do pick the personalities, you do pick what you feel fits the culture, right? Otherwise, I don't think Jake Trbojevic makes the team last year, let alone, is the captain. So that's why they've gone Max King, I think, as well. And with Payne Haas with that quad strain, he may not run till next week, which it sounds like Haas will be right to play. But if Haas wasn't going to play, Yuto Kamano comes into this team as well. So Terrell May, wasn't even considered sort of one of the best props available to Laurie, or simply Laurie said that others were, going better than him. Lenu brings a certain brand of aggression that they feel fits the bench better, although May was on the bench and was pretty good for the Roosters last year too. So, I think a little bit more than footy reasons going on. It's a predictable back row with Angus Crichton, the Wally Lewis medalist, Martin, Yo, your series-winning back row, right? In my team, I had Gus on a bench because Huddy Young's been the best edge forward in the comp this season for mine. And then I watch someone like Ola Kawatu every week, and to me, he's almost unstoppable. So I would have found a spot in my 17 for him, but he is just in the wider squad. My Blues picks would have been a little different, but I was picking, again, out of the box. No big surprises to me, pretty predictable, other than King over May. But as I said, when you recognize the effort areas of Max King and the speed for a prop that he provides, then it's very understandable. Let me bring up some of your comments. Ryan, no Appy, no May, no Luai. I thought one Tiger would get picked, but it may actually be to the benefit of the Tigers. Colt, the New South Wales centers are going to be a handful, that's for sure. Benny and the bets. I would have put money on King getting picked if it was possible. Yeah, like he's been under the radar, but definitely deserves his spot there, and it's a great story. Colt, Cam Murray would have been walk-up start if wasn't injured, and that's true as well. And there's been a debate in the past about who the best lock is for the Blues, and there's been games where the Blues have played better with Cam Murray at lock than Yo, but I feel like Yo, even in a struggling season for Penrith, has been just class again this year. Got the opportunity to captain Australia last year, so you really can't go wrong. And of course, like the way that he meshes with Cleary, he's one of your very first picked. Thoughts on who else could be there over Lomax? Well, so I wouldn't have picked Turbo because of the injury risk. Kiraz got injured in round 11. So you suddenly didn't have as many awesome outside backs as you would have first thought, because I don't think Pappenhausen works on a wing. So off the top of my head, I don't even know who. That's a great question, like who your next outside back could have been for the Blues. Throw some names at me, guys. I mean, like Teddy. Like, it wouldn't let you down if you just had to throw him on a wing instead of Lomax. Tupou. I mean, Nwanga Tuaze has the ability. Probably just needs a bit more consistency under the high ball. Yeah, Kiraz is out for a few weeks. Otherwise, that would be the obvious sort of next choice. Look, Adokar didn't look too bad on the weekend, but obviously you'd feel his sort of time has passed. Xavier Savage, that could be the answer. He's had an awesome season this year on the sting for the Raiders. So yeah, Origin special. I will try and do something for you guys. I'll let you know when, and I'll deep dive further in terms of how the game actually plays out. If you want to let me know how you see it, you can comment. Someone says Xavier Savage is a Queenslander. All right. Now I need that fact checked. I'm pretty sure he was New South Wales. Otherwise, I feel like Xavier Savage should be in the Queensland team over Toya, and then you'd have Holmes back in the centres. That's the thing about live comments. Love incorporating them. Unfortunately, we get a bum steer here and there, and we might get people stating things as if they're a fact when they may or may not be. But I'm guilty of doing that as well. And I've seen 2 people in a row said Xavier Savage is Queensland. So I appreciate that. If you correcting me, let me know. Of course, Campbell Graham is in the extended squad. So if there is an outside back injury, then Campbell Graham's the next man in. And he obviously deserves an opportunity too, been through the ringer with the injuries. So I wonder how close Xavier Savage was to getting picked, because I would have had him, let's say, ahead of Jesse Arthurs in the Queensland extended squad. But there you go. Let's jump into the games. I know some people complain about these type of rounds. Oh, the marquee names are missing. But I like it because it gives us a glimpse of sort of the players that are waiting in the wings. It tests teams' depth, and it gives us, opportunity to try and match our wits with the bookies in terms of evaluating how some of these new combinations are going to perform. So on my display, I'm now going to bring up the team lists and try and squeeze in at least like the starting sides. And we've got Thursday night. It is Bulldogs, Dolphins. The way it worked out, 5 games. I've got 3 best bets. So just the first and last game of the round where I don't have a best bet. Comment there, weird picks by Billy. Clarkey's preseason prediction will be right that it will be Slater's last series. And Adam says Savage would just about get picked if the Origin teams were named in April, but for a month. I mean, Savage started the year on fire. So I think for sure that's a good call. And Jeff says, glad Cowboys got the bye. And there's certainly some teams that have a lot of Origin representation who definitely appreciate not having to front up in weeks like this. Ryan, the only look-ahead bet I took was Finns plus 6.5 first half. Don't feel that confident. So that goes to show the look-ahead line was Dolphins plus 12.5. It's now plus 8.5. Let's get into it. The Dogs, I have to make this point too. The Dogs get stiffed again on the 18th man front because the 18th man is Kurt Mann. And he's had a great year. He is a Queenslander. And after multiple games where Matty Burton was picked at 18th man, as Trubbish says, he got Finn's 14.5 as well. But Doggies fans will know all too well, they had multiple games where Matty Burton didn't play for them because he was picked as the 18th man and didn't even play in Origin, but was withheld from the prior round of footy. And now it's Kurt Mann. Now, a couple of questions, can't you let a player play on a Thursday night and then play, like be the 18th man the following Wednesday if the player wants to? I feel like common sense. Some people will say, oh, well, you should have to pick your 18th man from one of the 7 teams that's idle. Is that right? There's 7? Yeah, 7 teams idle, but that may be a bit unfair depending on, like, Queensland doesn't have as many players to pick from. 18th man is more important than ever because there are more HIAs than ever, right? So I can understand why, like, you have to do what's best for the Origin team, but I'm just go back to the fact that the Dogs do get stiff there. And of course, Crichton, the captain, is out. King a little unexpected, will be on rep duty. Kiraz got injured. Saluka Fafita got a head knock. Josh Curran does return from suspension. Bailey Hayward, who's been mighty impressive this year when called upon, is at lock. As you can see, Blake Taff is at centre. Hey, buddy. Nearly had a little cameo on the show. Former Bulldog Avarillo is at fullback, replacing the Hammer, of course, and then Gilbert getting injured. Fini Fuaki, I'll make this point, he's in the wider Queensland squad, but is expected to be released to Sydney to come down and play. Both, I guess that could change if someone like Nane has an injury, and I'm not just throwing that out there for no reason. There were whispers about an injury there, but you, as a Finns fan, I hope Fini Fuaki can play here. Two teams that were also both down 14-0 at one point in round 11. It was the Dogs, who still came back and won, though. And I look at the Dogs and say, yeah, the Dolphins are catching Canterbury at a pretty good time because there's like at least six of the strongest 17 are out when you factor in Salmon injured, Preston still suspended as well. But then I think about my Finns, and I reckon about six of the best players are missing too when you consider Plath, Daniel Saifidi, Marshall King, and if you count Tommy Flegler as well, then the Dolphins, are not that close to their full complement either. So my only play could be Dolphins with the 8.5. I do believe that line's a bit high, and yeah, it's not, the Dogs' depth continues to be tested, and the Dogs were down 20-0, down 14-0 the last couple of weeks. But you got to give them a lot of credit because they came back and won those games. I do think the Dogs should be favourites of over 6 points when you factor in it's at a core as well. I think the Dogs have got the better back line there, and then you've still got like Burton, Marnie, Kickout. Curtis Morin has been a weapon off the bench for him as well. So I also think the fact that the Dogs have been down 3 or 4 tries the last couple of weeks means that the blue and white could actually have a focus on starting faster. And if the Dogs get on top in this one, I think it could be a long night for the visitors, which is why the line currently is justified. If it was still, that double-digit spread that, again, was a good opportunity for people to grab before the likes of maybe a Kira's injury or a King got selected, especially if you had a little bit of mail that was coming, or an inkling, like Benny said before, you could have got a really juicy line. And in general, taking the big, high plus lines in weeks like this is going to work well for you. Although, other than, of course, the Sharks game. But I wouldn't have been betting against the Sharks side that you knew wasn't going to lose any Origin players. Anyway, that's why I don't have a best bet on this game and why I do see it as a very tough trip for the Finns against the top Dogs. Let's move to Friday night, where we just have the one game, but it is a good one. Eels, Manly. And the Seagulls are 6.5-point favourites. For the Eels, no Mitch Moses or Lomax. Hawkins is the 7. Tuolangi is back from suspension, starts in the second row. Manly also lose their halfback and captain. Jake Arthur comes in. Gerbo out with concussion. So Tavanga will start at lock, and it's his brother Tom who captains the side. Ola Kawatu will play because, again, he's not in the Blues top 18. Lockie Croker is notably on the bench. And look, the Eels have been a mess this year without Moses, but I do think that confidence has increased in the last few weeks. Not that the Eels have won all those games, but I've seen a better footy team, and the defense has had real improvement. And this line is too big for me because I do think it can go either way. I know Moses and Lomax are huge outs, but one thing that benefits Para is that those players have already had really long stints on the sideline. So Para sort of have been forced to play without those guys for most of the year, while Manly losing DCE, Gerbo. Here's the thing about Tommy Trbojevic. The week that he doesn't get picked for Origin, what do you think might happen? Is he going to come out and light the field on fire, torch my best bet single-handedly, make the Blues selectors second-guess themselves, especially with the captain's armband? That's possible. And if you're going to take Para, then you're going to be a little bit concerned, obviously, about what Turbo is capable of. But to me, the line seems to suggest that, Manly's got a big benefit here of keeping Turbo. But there's a reason why Turbo didn't get picked for the Blues, as I've discussed. I don't think he's that close to his best. And I feel like it's a variable that's in our favour. We take the start, and my best bet's plus 7.5 with the Eels. We take the start with Para. If Tommy's at his best, the line probably should be around that number. But if he's a little bit sub the turbo that we're used to, then this is anybody's game. Like, Para's got the pace to match Manly. You have to have speed to contain Manly's outside backs. I don't look at that Eels forward pack and think that they're going to get rolled by Manly. I think the Manly's got the slightly better forward pack, of course, but they're also, not playing at 4 Pines. And I look at Dylan Brown, and he's the best half on the field. And this is the guy that got the richest contract in the history of rugby league. And he's underperformed this year, but then Dylan Brown's looked a little bit better with Moses back. Now Moses is out. I'm not expecting Dylan Brown to go into his shell. I'm expecting Dylan Brown to now sort of take the reins because this Eels team are not the easy beats that they were in the first month of the competition. So I give the Eels a real shot to win. Maybe Turbo has a hand in a winning try. Maybe it's a Garrett goal kick in it, but I'm comfortable. I even sacrificed the extra 3 cents to get plus 7.5. To me, that's worth it. That's a strong play. Comments? The answer regarding Turbo is yes. You're going to have to remind me. I've asked a few questions there, Undertaker. Was that whether or not he's 100%, or whether he is potentially a bit hampered, or whether you're happy that he didn't get picked? 2AA2 says, felt like Manly got a bit lucky with the 18-point win last week. I mean, it blew out late. It was a pretty tight game for the first sort of 50 minutes. Luke says you could argue without DCE, it doesn't really upset the cohesion to a certain degree. I'm not sure. Like, with any player that you rely on so much, and the kicking game and your captain, unless you're talking about the distraction of DCE and that like Manly needs to learn to play without him, and this is that first test run. I suppose that if you want to pin some of Manly's struggles on the contract saga with DCE, or and the fact that he's not going to remain at the club, then you could say you're a limit. There's some sort of addition by subtraction of taking out that distraction. And I think Moses is a superior player to DCE at this point in their careers. It's like a bigger loss to Para. But yeah, I'm really not sitting here arguing that the Eels are clearly the better team or anything like that. But when the Eels are at home, for you to tell me that the Seagulls should be a 6.5-point favorite, you got to tell me they're 8 points better on a neutral field type thing. I don't see that at all, given sort of who is and isn't available. So let's move to the Saturday doubleheader at Bathurst, 5:30. Game I do have a best bet on. We have the struggling Knights traveling to Bathurst to face the champs. Just before that, sorry, let's see if I get any more comments. Ryan says, we think Manly cover a plus 10.5 spread. But you're going to get about $1.10 for that. Unless you mean win by more than 10.5. Undertaker Manly also bombed a few tries last week. Just common. Penasini, edge, worst possible option they had. Luke, Manly will show what they can do without DCE. Colt, if Turbo is going to put in a big game, this is it. That's true, and that is the fear. But, you can't never bet against teams that have superstar players because you can envision the superstar dominating the game. And if there was ever a week where I was less fearful of Turbo, I watched him limp around the park at QCB. Admittedly, Manly didn't really need to lean on him and did well regardless. And 2AA2 says Jazz did look good last week. Olaquatu chip on his shoulder. I think a lot of players, I do worry about that. The gun players that just missed Origin selection, you often see them make a statement in weeks like this. So Olaquatu, one of the reasons why I do think Manly pack is superior to Para, and it's not going to be an easy night, but I still think 7.5 points is the right side of the ledger. Now let's move to Saturday, where the line is 7.5 and 8.5 in the favour of the champs. Look, Penrith might be sitting bottom 4, but when you've won 4 straight comps, you knew you're going to have several Origin players. All the names that were expected, Toto, Edwards, Yo, Martin, Cleary, are going to be there. I suppose if you were a believer that like Pappy or Teddy was going to get picked, you may have been looking at Edwards being available for Penrith and some value for Penrith. But I'm here to tell you that Luke Garner and Isaiah Papali'i are out as well. So I can't even read you all the changes. It'll take too long. But Brad Schneider's in there at 6. Preston Ricky is starting on an edge. Lindsay Smith, a player who played for the Kangaroos last year, he wasn't even in the Origin frame, was he? I guess that's the thing about when Penrith haven't dominated this year, you're not going to get any smokies. You're only going to get the established old guard. But look, I'll roll it down to the interchange bench to give you some idea there for the Panthers. That's an all New South Wales Cup bench. No disrespect, but this, it's just a lot of NRL experience is missing this week from the Panthers side. The Knights only lose one Origin player on the other side of things. That's obviously Kalen Ponga. But Fletcher Sharp can do a job at 1. Gamble moves to 6. Cogger at 7. Lucas and Leo Thompson are big returns, though Jacob Saifidi is also out. To me, this was way too many points. Yes, the Knights have been awful. Let me acknowledge that. But I just have a feeling you make this trip, do we consider Bathurst the bush? At least regional New South Wales, a date with the champs who you won't take lightly no matter who's named because you're going to see those Penrith jerseys. I feel like this is an opportunity to bring the team together after 2 horrid home efforts, show some heart here. And it's just a Penrith side that's a far cry from any that we're accustomed to. If you want to say they've got championship DNA and a far superior coach, I believe you. But honestly, let's scroll back up. The Knights have the better team available this weekend. So I think the Knights have every chance of winning. If you want to factor in putrid form, I thought this line would be Penrith minus 3.5, not 7.5, 8.5. I'm going to say Knights can win. And I'm also going to say if the Knights lose by double digits, which is what it would take to beat our best bet, you just leave Adam O'Brien in Bathurst. Let's have a listen to the best bets from the Undertaker and the Padonis. Surely they're seeing it similarly to me.
G'day guys, Matty here again. My tip of the week, we're going to Carrington Park at Bathurst. And I love the Knights this week, which is hideous to say. This is an awful team, but look at that Panthers lineup. That's a hideous team too. It's a good thing these two teams are playing each other because I'd have probably every team in the comp favoured to beat them. Anyway, I think 8.5 is way too many points. I love the Knights there. I also love the under 44.5, and I can't decide which one to play. So I'm actually going to take a bit of extra points both ways and play it as a same game multi and get a bigger price. At $2.10, we get under 50.5 and we get Panthers plus 12.5, a key number there. So that's what we're going to do. Play it as a same game multi, a bit of plus money. It's going to be a horrible, horrible game. It'll make your eyes bleed. Maybe you don't watch it. Good luck.
So Matty gets 4 extra points on the line, and he also plays the total under, which makes a lot of sense when you consider the firepower that'll be missing from this game. I'm just looking at what the regular total for this one is. 44.5, so pushes the total up 6 points as well. But not surprised at all because this game was really screaming out to me that you've got to be on the Knights. Not surprised at all. Undertaker sees it the same. And as I said, haven't listened to Padonis yet, but let's find out right now what he's picking.
Hey guys, Padonis here. Hope you're all safe and well. Round 12 now, sitting on an 8-1 record on the live pod. I know that's not sustainable long term, but let's definitely enjoy the ride while it does last. So let's continue the streak. Looking at Penrith and the Knights game, I'm going to go either team 1-12. That's $1.95 on Bet365. I just think that both of these teams are coming in depleted. We know that the Knights are struggling. They lose Ponga at fullback, who's been their brightest talent so far this year, even though they have been struggling and his form's been down himself. They're coming up against the Panthers team who are missing 5 Origin players coming off the bye. I think Penrith do enough to get it done, but I had this spread closer to 6. It's at 8.5 on most places, so I'm happy to take the 1-12 either team because I just don't think that the Knights are capable of blowing anyone out at the moment. And I can see it being a tight, low-scoring game, and happy for Penrith to lean on their defensive principles, just do enough to grind out a win, Knights to hang in there for long periods, and 1-12 either team. Good luck, gamble responsibly.
So happy to hear Padonis also likes the Knights, which you want to like the underdog when you take either 1 to 12. I like the way he's playing it there too. So he's getting 4 more points than I'm getting. He's getting plus 12.5 instead of 8.5. And what he's risking is the Knights can't win 13 plus. And I appreciate that angle. And probability wise, I think it's a fair trade off. I actually wouldn't be shocked if the Knights won this game 13 plus, because I feel like just as the way we saw a Magic round where the Knights had lost 5 in a row and then were actually slight underdogs at the start of the week, but then beat Souths by like 30. Sometimes these teams that are really struggling, when they actually get their tails up, they can sort of let it loose. So that's why I like it my way, but Padonis is scorching hot, so I'm not going to argue there. And hopefully we can both get up. A couple of sort of theoretical questions. Happy to take these as well. A question: do you tip underdogs whenever you take the handicap line? I wouldn't say every time, but I would generally say that if I'm taking the handicap line, it means I think that the line should be lower if I'm taking the underdog. And that generally means I disagree with the sort of pricing in the market. So often it does mean that the underdog head-to-head price would be greater than what I believe it should be. And I absolutely would have some money on the Knights to win outright this weekend, and even laying like alt lines and margins with the Knights because of the same principle that I think this should be closer to pick'em. Not saying it should be pick'em, but it should be closer to pick'em than where it sits right now. And I think that the Knights, they could fail horribly here. I'm not going to be shocked if Ivan Cleary outcoaches Adam O'Brien, but I just think if they're fair dinkum whatsoever, the Knights should actually be winning this game. Not saying it's a lock, but definitely saying that represents value to me. And I think it is extra value because the Knights have failed and looked so bad in recent weeks, like back-to-back home games against Titans and Eels. And, you get out to 20-0 and then you score one try, or you go, if we count second half against Titans and then the first 75 minutes against Para, then we're talking about 2+ hours of no points at home against the Gold Coast and Eels, so that's an eyesore to watch. But I do think even without Ponga and Best, of course, I still think the Knights should have a bit more to offer in this game, though Matty's probably safe with his under 50.5. And then another comment here from Cameron Smith, who says, sorry if this is off topic, but just wondering, what are the main reasons why a team does well one week and poorly the next? Where does the variance really come from? Well, I think human nature that you're not consistently sky high every single week. People think, they're professional players. They play their very best every week. It's just impossible. Go back in history and look at every team that has won the comp. And you've had some of the best teams in modern history, like obviously Penrith the last 4 years, Storm before that, Roosters. And you'll find even the very best teams still lose 4 or 5 times every season, if not more, right? Because they're still going to have down weeks. So not every team consistently plays the same level every week. The other thing is that in a game, every game is different conditions. Slightly different players are playing, weather conditions. The ball bounces a different way. The ref makes a different call one week. A player has a good game, then a bad game. A player drops a put down one week, scores a screamer the next week. Things happen in games, and you're not playing the same opponent every week. So one week a team might look really good, but maybe the opponent was poor. And then the next week that team gets flogged, and you're like, well, how did they get so much worse a week later? Maybe it's because they played a way better opponent, like certain weeks where, Melbourne beat West by 64 points. Melbourne's not 64 points better than West, but Melbourne were really fired up after losing 2 of 3. They would have probably flogged anyone in the comp. But then a week later, when Melbourne goes to Cronulla, Melbourne actually loses and is, lets in 25 at halftime. So I think that's just sport for you. It's the variance of all the different things that you can't possibly quantify that happen on the field, as well as the fact that, teams, with injuries that are both known and also unknown, as players playing a little bit hurt that we don't know. So therefore, a player might not be going to have as good of a game as we envision because they're actually just battling and they're needing to get a needle to play. There are certain things that we can't possibly know, but there are also, factors that we try and take into account, like rest, key players, combinations who are available, certain matchups, weather conditions, home advantage, teams wanting to respond from a bad performance. That's all the sort of stuff that sometimes is hard to build into the odds that we're trying to take an advantage from if we can, find some of those more subtle factors. Ryan says, I like Knights plus 8.5. Also don't mind Padonis sway and the old unders game. Undertaker nearly made the same bet. Luke, Knights haven't beaten Penrith in 5 years, but this is their best chance. Agree. Colt, do you think ongoing trend in the future with inconsistent results, especially when expansion happens? Well, the other thing is the style of the game these days with the 6 agains and stuff. Like, teams only have to be a little bit apart. One team can be a little bit better than another, but it can really compound. If like one team's a little bit off the pace and then makes a couple of errors and then gets behind the 8 ball, and then the fatigue builds into them because they're up against it because of a lot of 6 agains and penalties, and you're getting scored on and you're doing a lot of tackling, then we're seeing teams score 3 or 4 straight tries routinely. And while that does mean you're going to get wild comebacks, it does also mean sometimes you're going to get blowouts. And on paper, that game, would have looked closer. So it's really tough, but I'm not here to complain about it. Like, it's tough for the bookies to get it right too. And if we can find spots, I do think that an evolution of punting on the NRL is actually, it's something I want to build into the show to benefit followers more, is how can we take advantage of betting on more extreme results, like the big upsets or the big comebacks or big swings, because it definitely is more frequent, and I can appreciate why that is. And I do think that means, no more multis with a heap of safe legs and a lot more trying to pick long shots when we think that conditions could transpire for stuff to go our way. So a good example of a long shot could be, I don't want to go against Padonis pick, but like, this is the kind of week where I'd be looking at some alt lines for Newcastle. Let's say that. Cam, thanks for taking the time to reply, mate. #1 punting show worldwide. Yeah, I appreciate you. Anytime, guys. I'm happy to sort of answer as many questions as I can. All right, that's Saturday. Oh, that's only the first one Saturday. So a couple more games still to cover. We do have another best bet on the line when the Roosters and Sharks play. So the Sharkies are a 9.5-point favourite. This game is at Allianz. I've sort of lost my place. Remind me as well, I got Benny Williamson's bet in the chamber for this one. The Chooks have been hit harder than you would have expected, given their struggles, right? They're 11th, but yet Angus Crichton, Connor Watson, Collins, Lenu, and then the unexpected one was Toya, all picked for Origin. Then Nafua White, who's been a revelation this year, is out as well. So in the team, you'll see Dom Young's been recalled. Butcher is back. Makatoa starting prop. You got a Sharks side that's sitting 5th, doesn't lose a single Origin player. Stone Street did get injured. Hirotti's in there. Ramian, I understand, is in some doubt. But you got Teague Wilton on an extended bench who could come in as well. I don't see how the Tricolours contain the Sharks pack that savaged the Storm on Saturday night. It really is as simple as that to me. And then, you've got your first choice halves, because you've got to remember someone like Sam Walker still remains out for the Roosters. As much as Roosters' form's been a bit better in the last month, and Smith and Savala have done a steady job. You need more than steady to pull an upset here. I know you still got Teddy, but I guess you look at Nwanga Nisuaze being a rocks or diamonds player, and if he comes up diamonds this week, Dom Young plays with a point to prove. I respect the form of the Roosters, and I know what a great coach Robinson is, but Fitzy's not going to overlook that either. Fitzy coached under Robinson for several years and is not going to underestimate his old club. He knows that they're not going to make it easy for him. So I just feel like this is a must-win for the Sharks, who should achieve absolutely nothing less than a top 4 finish again this year, given just the ability of the squad, the fact that several other contenders or preconceived contenders coming into the year, like Penrith, like Brisbane, have underperformed so badly. And look, no disrespect, but you're looking up and you're seeing the likes of Raiders and Warriors above you. You feel you should be able to catch those sides, but you've got to win the weeks where you've got such a big advantage in personnel available to you. And I do think Cronulla does that, and just on the back of the superior forward pack and like strong showing against Melbourne. But again, I don't think they're going to overlook the Roosters here either. So Roosters can rip in. Maybe Roosters try and junk it up or play a bit of high variance footy and maybe some trick plays. Wouldn't be surprised, which could make it interesting. But yeah, I'll lay that 9.5. I'm going to tip it gets to 10.5 as well by game day. And we got a ripper to conclude our weekend on Sunday. It's Warriors Raiders at Go Media Stadium, and the Warriors are a 1.5 point favorite. This is second versus third. No Fisher Harris, who is suspended. That hurts. In addition to obviously Barnett being picked for the Blues. The Raiders have a sole origin selection also. That is Huddy Young. The other thing about this is, of course, this is a rematch of the opening game of the season. Oh, thanks, guys. I've literally got Benny Williamson there, but I did need, in my notes, I did need the reminder. So we're going to scoot back and listen to who Benny picked in the Sharks game.
Yeah, TryPod family, as always, thanks to Jacob for having me on. Great to be back in the winner's circle last week with Hudson Young getting his customary try against the Titans. That's 4 wins, 5 losses, few over $2, so we're getting towards where we need to be. Still not on honest level, but we've got a long way to go over the course of the season. This week we're going to back the money man Mulatalo, who's got a fantastic strike rate against the Roosters. He's scored in 5 out of 6 head-to-heads against them. The Roosters have conceded 4 left-wing tries in their most recent 6 games. The matchup looks too good for me. I'm happy to back Mulatalo at $1.80 on Sportsbet. Best of luck if you follow.
The man who was stirring the pot against the Storm, and I'm sure he's let the Raiders know how he feels about him in several past games that I can remember. Sorry, not the Raiders, the Roosters. Look, Ronaldo, he'd be playing Origin if he'd moved to Queensland 1 year earlier, or if they didn't catch him out. Remember that bizarre Sunday morning a few years ago? Anyway, sorry, apologies to Benny, but I thank you to the boys in the chat who reminded me we needed to get Benny's tip. I think Benny Williamson started the year like 0-3, 0-4, but he's quietly been making good money for us, winning something like 4 of the last 5, and all his tips up till now had been plus odds as well. Mulatalo, $1.80, a little bit shorter there, but I do like it as well, just simply because he's a class winger on a team that I have tipped to win by double digits. Now, getting back to this one, as someone says, Just Common, finally a Wars game on free-to-air. Yeah, it's an unusual spot to sort of get the Warriors in the prime Sunday Arvo spot. You love to see it. Second versus third. So let's talk about that Vegas game where the Warriors' attack was completely lifeless. The Raiders dominated from start to finish. And a lot of people wrote the Warriors off. Like I said, let's not be too extreme. The Warriors were awful that day. How bad do you think they're going to be this year? And people were saying, they're gone, wooden spoon. The Warriors have lost 1 game since then. 1 game since February. And that was in Melbourne, by the way. I do lean to the Raiders, though, because I do look at that starting front row of Tapine and Horsburgh against Ford and Afoa, just considering who's out for the Warriors. But I do have to say, after 3 road games where the Warriors went and won in Australia, 3 in a row, the house will be rocking. And it does occur to me that the Warriors sometimes do let themselves down when they're expected to win, and they are a slight favourite here. And Bedang says wrong team favoured. Raiders win this one. But I do wonder as well if there's that revenge factor too, because the Raiders sort of know the Warriors know how the Raiders dominated them in Vegas. And clearly the Warriors, their preparation, they got it wrong or just weren't ready to peak that week, because that was not the same Warriors team that we've seen ever since as JK says Warriors minor premiership. It's a huge game as well because they're both very realistic shots of finishing the year in the top 4, based on what we've seen out of them the first 3 months of the year. And definitely if you can get the win in this game, you're going to be sitting top 2. And then you're looking down, you're looking at potentially hosting games in the finals, in week 1, and potentially getting sort of that coveted home prelim. So it's a massive game. I look at the matchup between Egan, who I said should have been an Origin Smoky, Starling, who's had incredible form this year. I like the matchup. I think it is pretty even. I do think the Raiders are the slightly better team, but I've got to respect the travel factor and New Zealand getting home after 3 straight road games and the atmosphere that this game's going to bring. If you wanted to have a bet on this one, the bet that I looked at really closely was Raiders plus half a try, because I think it probably is anyone's game, could come down to a field goal. But I just couldn't quite get there because of my respect I have also got for the Warriors. And I just think both sides are going so well and defending at a high level. Unders is the only other way I could look at it in terms of a total. Let's read some of your comments out. Bunty will carry for 300 meters. Yeah, he's going to need to replace some serious production. Wah's attack is still rough, but they defend like dogs last year. Give me the Raiders line. I mean, that's the thing, though. The Warriors have won the last 2 weeks, scoring 15 points and scoring 16 points, but that's the mark of a good team. Colt says, reckon either team 1-12 would be a safe play. Does anyone know the conditions? Undertaker Waz have played a poo-poo schedule. No signature win. See, I thought that win at home to Brisbane was pretty damn good. I thought beating a Cowboys team that won 4 in a row at Magic Round was pretty impressive, although it was really only like an impressive 40 minutes. I also thought the spot was really good for the Dragons. So I actually think that win, was that in the gong? Like, that was impressive to me. Beating the Finns too. Like, how dare you say that the Warriors have had an easy schedule? To be honest, Warriors were pretty impressive in that game too. So I'm going to push back a little bit. I'm sort of defending all the Queensland teams, and Undertaker, not surprisingly, is saying unless you beat a strong Sydney team, then we don't respect you. Well, how about this, Undertaker? Didn't the Warriors flog Manly in round 2? Barnett and Fisher out. Raiders are favourites. That's healthy, guy. Yeah, that's sort of why I can't play New Zealand, because that's your biggest strength, and it's actually going to be major advantage to the Raiders there with the front rowers. As Luke says, New Zealand could come out flat after winning all those games in a row and all that travel, I suppose, and that's definitely a risk. So I'm agreeing with most of your guys' sentiment. As the Undertaker says, Manly also suck. Do you have a tip for that one, by the way, Undertaker? Do you like my plus 7.5 with Para tomorrow night? Give me a read on that before we get out of here. Jeff says, are the Perth Bears playing? Jeff, I think you should look into this a bit further. Just search Bears Perth and join and try and keep up with all the latest information and news if you can. That'll do it, guys. We've still got an hour, but that's because I dedicated a good 15-20 to talking Origin, because I just feel like that's the conversations that we're all having, in the workplace or with our mates, as much as there are 5 games to cover. So that's how I see it. I've still come up with 3 best bets. I'm really screaming out for a winning week, so I'm hoping at least 2 of those 3 can get up. But I'd love to know how you feel. I've copped a couple of comments and messages about the results not being good enough. So, you're potentially going the other way on any of my plays. Undertaker does say Manly by plenty, so he might be against my tip on Friday night. But at least, Matty, we're both riding the Knights together on Saturday. JK says Warriors never flat at home. If only that was true, though. JK. Colt, thanks for a fantastic preview. Sensational work as always. Look, I appreciate it. In fact, I feel embarrassed to even read comments like that out. So cheers, guys. Have a great week. Thanks for joining me. Enjoy. Continue the conversation in the comments. And I'll be back Sunday to recap it all. Lego.